I think we cannot normalize what has happened here in the last week with Trump and his behavior. This is a president who knows he's losing, who knows he's in trouble, is sick, maybe is on the after effects of steroids or not, I don't know, but he is acting erratically and desperately, and we need to not normalize that.
Don't normalize the President of the United States, says Jeff Zucker, the president of the fake news network known as CNN. Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, the whole team over there doing extraordinary work. James O'Keefe broke my website, by the way, yesterday. We posted the videos of him dialing in to the CNN editorial call yesterday morning, almost broke the website, and then in the evening we posted, and we'll be playing the next clip very soon, we posted the clip of him talking, of Jeff Zucker talking to the editorial team, broke the national pulse. For about a minute or two, the website went down. I want to thank all the people who are out there sharing our stories, whether it's Gaylords, which is our lead story at the moment on the Pulse, talking about the witnesses that went to the Amistad Project yesterday to the press conference, all the details of that, everything else, Ted Cruz, the cruise missile and all that. Everything's there at the National Pulse as well. This is John Fredericks Radio Network, Real America's Voice, G News GTV, hashtag War and Pandemic, over 21 million downloads. Want to give a shout out to our partners, Citizen Free Press, Populist.press, Revolver.news. Darren Beattie will be on very soon in the program as well, talks to us about more of what his statistical team is saying. And of course, episode 555 begins here. Jack Maxey, Greg Mans in studio. Stephen K. Bannon, if you're just tuning in to us now, is on special assignment today. So you got me. And we've also got combat veteran Sean Parnell from Pennsylvania. We're part of one of these lawsuits that's going down in Pennsylvania right now. Talk about the cruise missile. Sean, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, anytime. Thank you for being here. Let's start at the top. This statement from Ted Cruz yesterday I felt was, I mean, I've never particularly been a massive Cruz advocate, acolyte. It's just never been my style. But he really laid in yesterday talking about your emergency appeal filed in the U.S. Supreme Court. Can you tell us more about that appeal and your response to the senator's statement?
Well, so I'll tell you, let's start a little context around the case. My case is about the constitutionality of Act 77, and Act 77 is Pennsylvania's no excuse absentee ballot law. It was passed out of the legislature in 2019 and implemented by the governor. And at the time, the attorney general did not opine on its constitutionality, and then it was implemented. Unfortunately, the law itself is unconstitutional because it requires a constitutional amendment. That process includes back-to-back votes in the General Assembly and the PA State Legislature, an advertisement in 2 straight newspapers in every county across the state of Pennsylvania, and perhaps the most important part is it needs to go on the ballot in a referendum so that the people have a say in how elections are conducted here in the state of Pennsylvania. Raheem, that was period, end of story. Act 77 is unconstitutional. It's a very clear-cut case. We got a favorable ruling from the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania from Judge McCullough, who said if this case goes forwards on the merits, there's no doubt the Republicans will win because, again, Act 77 is clearly unconstitutional. Governor Wolf then appealed to the PA Supreme Court. The PA Supreme Court took up the case. In fact, I think this happened maybe a day after I was on the show with Steve a couple days ago, actually. PA Supreme Court took up the case. It did not evaluate it on the merits. In fact, dismissed it on a procedural ruling and basically said, I filed the case too late. But here's the catch-22, Raheem. I wasn't even a candidate when Act 77 was passed. Had I brought a case to the Commonwealth Court and then to perhaps the PA Supreme Court, they would have dismissed it because in legal terms, my cause was not ripe or claim was not ripe, and the harm that I would be alleging was speculative. And they would have probably kicked me out of the court for having no legal standing, right? And so they ruled that I brought the lawsuit too late. right? So effectively putting me in a catch-22. And then, and this is very important, they dismissed my case without evaluating it on the merits with prejudice, which means that anybody else in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can challenge the unconstitutionality of Act 77 but me. And so the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is a 5-2 Democrat supermajority. They ruled against me without on the merits. And so my team and I, we appealed to the United States Supreme Court. And, you know, look, I'm really happy to see Senators Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley jump on board with this case, because I think it raises very, very important constitutional questions, not the least of which is Act 77 the most sweeping electoral change in the state of Pennsylvania? Is that constitutional? I believe, and most legal scholars also believe, that it is not. And if that's the case, what do you do with an election in 2020 that was inherently unconstitutional as well? Now, the left is saying that we're asking people to throw out 2.5 million absentee ballots. That's absolutely not true. What we're saying is that Act 77 is unconstitutional, and therefore any ballot that was submitted under that unconstitutional law is illegal. Now, we're asking the court to help us come up with a remedy to that. We're not asking the court necessarily to throw out those ballots, right? What we're asking is for help with a remedy. And so when the left accuses me of wanting to throw out 2.5 million absentee ballots, I answer that question with a question, Raheem. What about the millions of Pennsylvanians, and I mean it, Democrat, Republican, Independent, and otherwise, who never had a say as to whether or not they wanted no excuse absentee ballots in the first place? Right. And so I'm fighting this fight, Raheem, because if we don't fight it right now, then I think we'll forever lose the standing to really challenge Act 77 in the future, because it will just become the status quo. So we've got to challenge this law now, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Sean, it's Jack Maxey here. It would seem to me that every voter in the state of Pennsylvania would have standing in this case, particularly since it's a constitutional violation, which would put it right in the civil rights violation column, which makes the state liable. Why aren't we creating a class action suit representing all of the voters of Pennsylvania to go along with you in this?
Boy, you know what? That's a great question. And it's probably one better suited for my attorneys, and one that as soon as we finish up with the podcast, I'm going to ask them. But I'm hoping, it's tough to get a case in front of the Supreme Court, right? But I think we've got a really good chance. And, I think that there are very important federal questions nested within the question of Act 77. We recognize that Act 77 is a state issue. There are federal issues that need to be answered nested within that question, and we hope and believe that Justice Alito will take it up. And right now, one of the things that I kind of want to get out on the show, and I think this is important as well, is that the General Assembly in the state of Pennsylvania is controlled by Republicans. Right now, they're on the side of the governor in this lawsuit against me. Now, I would like to believe that the General Assembly in the state of Pennsylvania, both Democrats and Republicans, passed Act 77 because they thought that they were doing some good for their constituents, right? I'm giving them grace, and I believe that. But then the governor and the Secretary of State perverted and manipulated the law by removing all safeguards and watering down ballot integrity. They removed the postmark requirement. They removed signature verification. They removed the deadline. So they perverted and twisted a law that was passed with good intentions. And so my question to the Republicans in the General Assembly is, why are you on the side of the governor in this? You should be standing with me and standing for the people of this state who never got a say as to whether or not they wanted Act 77 or mail-in ballots in the first place.
I think you're 100% right. And one thing I also want to tell you is we've been doing a lot of analysis of the mailed ballots, the absentee ballots throughout Pennsylvania. And I can tell you it's shocking. Nobody would sign off on an audit that looked like this for a candy store. It is so bad. We have multiple ballots being sent to P.O. boxes. I mean, your race was only lost by 10,000 votes. I'd love to share with you some of the research that we have, because I'd keep fighting if I were you.
Yeah, I think that's right. Greg, I know you want to jump in.
Well, look.
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, can I tell you my experience on election night? And I'll let the viewers decide. We were up by 17 points on election night. And it was interesting because my opponent, Connor Lamb, had a press conference scheduled early that he had to cancel. Later on that evening, he said, well, it looks like we're not going to have enough votes tallied tonight to make a call, right? And so Allegheny County shortly thereafter stopped counting. Mm-hmm. Why? I have no idea. But we were up by 17 points on election night, over 43,000 votes. And by our calculations, and these are not projections because we knew exactly how many absentee ballots were left to count on the Republican side, Democrat side, and independent. And Connor Lamb had no honest mathematical path to victory. In the end, if he got everything that he was supposed to get, we got everything that I was supposed to get, and then we split independents even 60-40 or 70-30, we were going to have about a 13,000 vote margin of victory. There were a couple of networks that had called the race. In fact, Leader McCarthy called to congratulate me because it was simply just a question of math. Now, the following day, Allegheny County was supposed to start counting ballots again at 10 a.m. They did not start counting ballots at 10 a.m., but the ranking member of the Board of Elections in Allegheny County, Rich Fitzgerald, who's also a Democrat and a Lamb surrogate, did a media blitz saying that we're confident that when all the absentee ballots are counted, Connor Lamb will have a 2 percentage point margin of victory. We're confident that he will win. Then they started counting ballots at about 2:30 in the afternoon, the day after Election Day. We had no election observers with any real they were not positioned to really meaningfully observe at all, and they closed the gap, and that was to be expected because Connor had more absentee ballots than I did. And then at 8:30 at night, approximately 8:30 at night, there were two successive ballot dumps, one of 4,000 votes, one of 9,000 votes. Interestingly enough, those ballots, 13,000, right, which was supposed to be my margin of victory. 25 minutes after that, Connor Lamb scampers out to the podium and declares victory, when there are still probably at that point over 25,000 provisional ballots left to count. Now, how are you declaring victory with that many ballots left unless you know something that I don't, right? And so, guys, we haven't gotten an answer from the Allegheny County Board of Elections at all. We've been stonewalled, and this race is still razor thin. And so we're fighting to get answers on these questions that I think are very important, because if we don't get answers on these questions, then 50% of the state of Pennsylvania is never going to believe in never going to trust in the election process again.
Greg?
Yeah, and the important thing to remember with Act 77 is the state legislature, initially at the onset of it, did start the process for a referendum and ultimately pulled back. So at the beginning, they recognized that there was a constitutional issue, and then eventually the deal was cut for this to be passed in the state legislature. But at that onset, there was movement towards this referendum.
Wow. All right, Sean Parnell, we're up against the break here. I want to thank you for joining us. Just tell our audience real quick, where can they follow up with you, follow you? How can they sign up for updates about your case?
Follow me on Twitter at Sean Parnell USA. I'm on Parler at the same thing, and Facebook and Instagram. And I've got a website, seanforcongress.co. If you believe in our legal fight, please go on there and contribute, because I can't do this without your support.
And we hope you continue to keep fighting. Hold the line. Sean Parnell, thank you so much for joining us here today on War and Pandemic.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely amazing. The fight that so many people, not just still having them, but you can see it's increasing. You can see that the their demeanor, their happiness with which they address this fight, because it's a fight we have to have. We're going to be back in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I know Steve wanted to wait until after Thanksgiving to hold these up. We have from one of our longtime listeners, Anne, some wonderful War Room branded cookies here. I don't know if you guys had seen. We did some National Pulse ones. In fact, I've kind of half eaten a National Pulse one today on the show so far. Welcome back to the War Room. Jack Maxey, Greg Mans, Raheem Kassam here on Capitol Hill, going through all the latest from the Steel. Lots going on out there. Of course, more from the Project Veritas CNN expose that we want to bring you across this show as well. We have in the next segment here as well, Patrick Colbeck will be joining us again. More this afternoon, we'll be talking about more details from the whistleblower. So there's an awful lot to cover out there. I woke up this morning, went through this entire long Thomas Friedman piece in the New York Times. He spoke to Joe Biden last night. Absolutely sickening, saccharine treatment of the Democratic candidate for president, Joe Biden, by Thomas Friedman. The kid gloves are well and truly on for the New York Times. Jack, you sound like you want to say something?
No, I just reading Tom Friedman is always a little bit painful, but I think one of the things that's just so clear in all these interviews of Biden, the questions are like, what's your favorite ice cream?
Yeah.
They know that he cannot answer a technical question, so they avoid them. And this, to me, shows to the American people their complicity in this fraud. They don't even care enough about the national security of this nation to elect a person with a full working brain.
But if you read this thing, and I know I know the audience doesn't love to read the New York Times, but just every so often you have to look. For me, I watch it, we get complaints, why you got CNN on the background, right? The point is that we have to know what the enemy is doing, right? You have to know where the enemy is positioning itself, how they're behaving, what their talking points are, what they're doing. I'll take that. That's on me. I have to suffer through that every single day, all day long. So does everybody else here on the team. Darren Beattie, who's joining us momentarily, does that all day long as well. And focusing what the enemy's doing. But I know you guys don't love doing it, but take a moment, just read this interview. It's actually posted as an opinion piece in the New York Times, which is weird. You think you get an hour-long interview with the supposed president-elect. You put it as more of an opinion piece. But hey, here's the thing. Go through it and just read. Jack Maxey's right. One of the quotes, I want to read you one of the quotes from this. He says, while Trump was focused on the trade deficit with China with little success, despite his trade war, Biden said his goal would be to pursue trade policies that actually produce progress on China's abusive practices, stealing intellectual property, dumping products, illegal subsidies to corporations, and forcing tech transfers from American companies to their Chinese counterparts. Thomas Friedman, you BS artist, that is what Joe Biden and his team helped China to do. That is the position they put the Chinese Communist Party in. That is where they assisted. They gave them a big assist. And look at the people that Biden is putting around him right now. All Chinese Communist Party apparatchiks. All these people who have worked for and with. You want to wait. We're dropping this afternoon. Maybe I'll do it right after the show. On the National Pulse, CNN anchors and Biden advisors both in the last 2 months attended Chinese Communist Party run conferences. We'll bring you the details later on. I want to bring in Darren Beattie now at revolver.news. Always got just incredible analysis there. We posted a link in the live chat. It's the pinned post in the live chat for those of you watching on YouTube. You can get it at revolver.news. Darren, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
So, Darren, you're going to have to hold my hand a little bit on this. I haven't gone through the entire statistical analysis here, but your headline on this exclusive is Statistician Reveals How Pennsylvania Democrats Used Fake Voter Registration Birthdays to Commit Voter Fraud. Walk us through this, please.
Right. Well, the procedure here is pretty simple and intuitive, and I think even quite a bit ingenious here. And so the idea was saying, if there was massive fraud of a particular type on the voter rolls of, say, people making up certain names and making up in particular birthdays, those made up birthdays wouldn't necessarily follow the expected distribution of birthdays organically, because when people make up birthdays, we tend to have these heuristic biases toward particular numbers, round numbers. People like round numbers because we happen to have a round number of physical digits on our body. So we like round numbers. We have these strange biases toward numbers and even toward months that don't really reflect the organic distribution of birthdays. And so the idea here was to say, let's actually look county by county in Pennsylvania and see to what extent there exist discrepancies between the birthdays reported for certain voters and the organic distributions of birthdays as we know it, and see whether that tracks or see whether we find some really severe statistical anomalies. And sure enough, we found pretty profound statistical anomalies. 7 counties in particular, we found that they were above the 99.5th percentile in terms of what you would expect comparing the actual reported birthdays versus the organic birthdays. So we drilled down in a number of counties in Pennsylvania that had really, really bizarre and deviated results in terms of the reported birthdays versus the actual organically expected birthdays. And so that indicates something's weird is going on in these particular counties. But then the next step is to show, okay, the places that have all these weird birthdays, do those happen to lean for Biden or not? And that was the second dimension of the analysis. It found that it leaned overwhelmingly for Biden, and that, say, using a statistical metric, 1 standard deviation increase in having these weird birthdays corresponded to a substantial increased percentage of the 2 vote share for Biden, of a sort that is so statistically unlikely it might as well be impossible. So that's also interesting. An additional layer of analysis, we looked at the places that were most bizarre in terms of birthdays and were also, as I just mentioned, happened to lean toward Biden. Those lean toward Biden in ways that are also historically anomalous. In fact, so the key counties displaying these irregular birthdays exhibited vote shares for Biden that exceeded vote shares for Democrat candidates going all the way back to the year 2000. And so we just took this principle and applied it across all these different dimensions to show that there is very likely something bizarre going on. And if people make up birthdays, it will look different from organically distributed birthdays. These places happen to lean very heavily toward Biden, and they happen to lean toward Biden not only relative to Trump, but relative to the way these counties were leaning to Democrats in previous elections going all the way back to 2000. And one last point, because I know a lot of your visitors saw me come on and I talked about an explosive statistical analysis on Montgomery County that had to do with a very suspicious batch of vote dump that came in the middle of the night. So we're already familiar with Montgomery County. And in that analysis, we saw that one feature of vote fraud or likely vote fraud in these areas is not just an unexpectedly high amount of vote share for Joe Biden, it's also an unexpectedly high vote share for the Libertarian candidate,
right,
because that's a way that the potential fraudsters would decrease Trump's number relatively without inflating Joe Biden to unrealistic levels. And sure enough, we found very, very powerful statistical connection between irregular birthdays and Libertarian vote share. So that was another interesting component of the study.
You're telling me that there isn't some major pocket of libertarian resistance in Montgomery County?
Well, that's the thing. From the last study, and this is a different study using a different metric, but compounding them, it really seems like there's something bizarre going on in Pennsylvania. But the previous Montgomery County study showed that Montgomery County would be the second most libertarian county in the country, which seems rather bizarre, to say the least.
Right. Guys, jump in if you have anything here.
Darren, we found some other stuff.
They're really big on the non-aggression principle in Montgomery County.
Darren, we found some anomalies comparing the mailed-in ballots, right? So you make a request, that gets scored, they date that. They send you the ballot, that gets scored, they date that. Then you send back the ballot and they vote it, that gets scored and dated. We found tens of thousands of examples where people had voted before they even received their ballot. I mean, we have graphs that can show this, that there actually were more ballots that were voted in Pennsylvania than actually were sent out to the voters. It indicates that there were pallets or Gaylord boxes of ballots that were dumped off in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh and in other areas. None of this smells right, and we really have got to get to the bottom of it. I'll share with you some of our research later on this afternoon, but love to collaborate with you a little bit.
Hey, Darren, we're up against a break here.
Absolutely.
Just please remind our audience we got the link in the live chat on the pinned to the Revolver statistical analysis. It is detailed, ladies and gentlemen. Get your number 2 pencils out, as Steve likes to say. I have an electronic one here. It works with my little e-pad that I have. But Darren, tell us where they can get more.
Yeah, go to revolver.news right now, read the study, share the study. I think it's really important we get the message out there and reinforce in people's minds that there's really bizarre stuff going on that demands explanation. So go to revolver.news now, read that, and there's another actually pretty explosive story about the McKinsey consulting company that I think your viewers will enjoy.
All right, back after this break.
你们健身了吗？行动，行动，行动！中国，你完了！ Take it down.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We're not being cheated, we're being conquered, says Bart in the live chat. I love reading from you guys live in the live chat on YouTube. Also here on Real America's Voice, G News, GTV, John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to make sure that you guys understand that whether or not you watch it here, and make sure you're hitting the like buttons, the subscribe buttons, it all helps us reach more people. Not just asking you to do it so that you get served the show every day. It pushes us up the rankings. And I know one of the most important things to you guys as the audience is helping us reach more people. We're very grateful for all your efforts. So download a podcast app if you don't have one on your phone or your laptop or whatever device you use, a pad or whatever. Subscribe. It's free. Subscribe through that podcast app to Bannon's War Room. And it's only subscriptions, you see, that push you up the iTunes rankings. The higher you go up, the more people are exposed to you, the more people will download for the first time, the more people subscribe, and you grow and grow. And we have been, and that's why I want to say a great big thank you to all of you guys and gals out there who have already done that. We've got Patrick Colbeck here joining us in this segment to bring us an update of what's taking place and more action points that need to be taken. Now, we thought we'd bring Vish in for the last segment here, but I'm going to leave that up to the audience. So in the live chat, if you want to hear from producer Vish, I know you haven't heard from him in quite some time, then let us know in the live chat. And if you don't, just say, we'll see how it shakes out. All right, Patrick, thank you for joining us here. Let's get straight down to business. You have been just an incredible resource, witness. I tweeted something the other day. I said, "Hey, you got Patrick Colbeck up there, NASA engineer and former state secretary and Microsoft engineer, and you compare and you contrast that to what the CNNs of the world were trying to have us believe in 2016-17. Stick Michael Avenatti on television with a porn star and go, yeah, this is a credible witness." So, Patrick, I want to thank you, first of all, for bringing your expertise to all of these scenarios and really for showing up the left for how they've behaved over the course of the last 4 years. So start us off. Where do you want to take us here?
Well, it's a pretty stark contrast between the folks who are fighting for liberty and the left. I mean, they're out doxing canvassers and their kids and telling people where they go to school, and we're out there singing God Bless America and, going out there and just doing the right thing. And the people that testified yesterday in the state of Michigan before the Michigan Senate were fabulous. They were the best of America. There were people, everyday Americans, just standing up and countering the narrative that says that there is no evidence of election fraud. And we had person after person testifying in their 3-minute allocation, tangible examples of election fraud. It opened the eyes of the Michigan Senate. I know in this program and a lot of others, there's a lot of frustration with the lack of action by our state legislatures But I'm telling you, I'm seeing the needle starting to move, because despite all the attempts to censor the truth about what's going on with regards to this election fraud, it's getting out to people. And the legislators are starting to hear it, and they're starting to take action. You saw earlier this week, I was out in Arizona testifying before the Arizona state legislature.
Yep.
And you could see the needle moving. Those legislators were getting it. The light bulb was going on. The evidence that was presented by Mayor Giuliani and his team was phenomenal. And we're going to be doing that again today. We got the Michigan House that's opened up their eyes to say, hey, let's hear what they have to say. There looks to be something here, and we'll see what happens today. I'm getting more and more optimistic as the days progress.
Well, I got to say, Patrick, I watched the whole day of hearing in Michigan, and I found it to be inspiring, just like you. I saw these common people stepping forward, and this is what we talk about, Courage is contagious, and the American people are not going to sit back and watch this republic die. The people of Michigan are not going to sit back and watch this republic die. And the reality is, as they say that, they're doxing us, everybody's going to have to live with their own conscience with the result of this. And I was very moved. There was a Hispanic lady who had become a citizen, and her talking about the burden of being an American and standing up for truth and justice, and how the whole world is watching, and how she did not move here to take that oath to see this country turn into the same kind of place that she left. And this is really what it's all about. And for our audience also, I don't want to go on too long. I've spoken to Patrick many times over this last 2 weeks, and I can tell you he's a patriot, he's a fighter, he's not alone out there. And you who have these same feelings in your breast that I have, that Patrick have, that others have, do not feel alone. Look around. There are other people out there who are ready to stand with you. This is not something where you should feel isolated. This is where you should start to feel like a team. Team America. We're taking back the country. We're taking back our Constitution, and we're taking back our rights. Sorry for going so long, Patrick, but I just wanted to let people know what an inspirational figure you are, and that this thing is not over by a long shot.
Well, I think there are a lot of heroes present on Tuesday giving their testimony. You just mentioned Jasmine Early. She's been a dear friend of mine for so long. She's run for state rep. She's run for city council. She has been mercilessly attacked because she does have a powerful testimony in defense of liberty, and she's phenomenal. We had Christina Karamos, we had Dr. Linda Lee Tarver talk smack to folks trying to play the race card on the elections in Michigan, and she was having nothing of it. So there were good people standing up all across the board, and those are the folks that are standing by with me, locked arms, saying we're not going to let them take over our election this time. And finally, they're seeing enough of us get together where I think the legislators are starting to take notice.
Fantastic. And the other thing that I thought was beautiful, Patrick, I just got to say, we were always defined as sort of the party that is not inclusive. And I saw every single race, every religion, every single kind of the rainbow of America was out there pleading for their rights and pleading as people who represent a conservative point of view. So the one good thing that we're seeing out of this is the media cannot pretend that we are a monolithic party anymore. We are a party that is concerned with freedom and the rights of American citizens as shareholders in this great nation.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jack, because I can assure you that was not a programmed speaker list. That was not something where I don't even have the bandwidth to go off and program any of that stuff right now with everything that's going on. And so I'll tell you, that was spontaneous. Those are the people who are actually around following up on what's going on with our election integrity, and they were the poll challengers on the ground in Detroit. It was so heartwarming to see. And by the way, actually, a side note.
Go ahead.
It's just, if I may, did you notice, because they are people coming from the full spectrum of the rainbow of America, a lot of Democrat poll challengers that were in there would go off and assume that because they had different colored skin that they were Democrats, and they were letting them in on all the vote intimidation practices that they wanted to do to disenfranchise Republicans from overseeing what was going on. And so that actually provided us with some unique testimony. And many of you, if you've heard what happened on Tuesday, you heard that.
And there's another reveal there too, Patrick. This shows you the innate sort of how should I say it, racism or superficial way that the left defines people, because they had conservatives in the room, but because of the color of their skin, they made an assumption that they were on their team. This is frightening. This is the bifurcation that we are watching occur inside this country because the Democratic Party does not consider us all children of God. They consider us colors on a palette, boxes on a piece of paper. That's the difference between the two parties. And if there's anything beautiful that's coming out of this, it's showing the whole world that the Republican Party represents every American.
Ballots in a gaylord, if you will.
Amen.
Patrick, I want to get some data points and some programming points from you. So, what should people be looking out for today, specifically the testimony tonight? Just give us the details of those things.
Well, one of the things we want to highlight is the fact that there is evidence, right? So, and the good news is we moved the narrative from the media being able to say that there is no evidence, and then they moved it to there is no substantive evidence to there is no substantive evidence that will overturn the election results. So we're moving the needle that way. And today we're going to go off and expose many of these House members in Michigan that have not actually heard the testimony around the proof because we don't have media outlets that are sharing that information. And not everybody's tying into Real America's Voice. Nobody's tying into Bannon's War Room. Nobody's tying into the OAN, to all these other networks. We've got to broaden that base. And when people are seeking the truth, we've got to provide them with avenues to get to that truth. And I keep pointing everybody to Sidney Powell's lawsuit in Michigan. There's 75 pages of evidence in that document alone. And we're going to be talking about a lot of those affidavits tonight in the testimony with Mayor Giuliani. And by the way, if you want to download those lawsuits, just go to my website at letsfixstuff.org, because I'm in that mode where I don't trust anybody. I want to read the actual document itself, the source documents, and no better way to understand the evidence in this case than to read from Sidney Powell's testimony and all those affidavits.
I think that's right. Hey, Patrick, we've got to jump here, but can you tell us more about where we can follow you, where we can follow your work, where we can make sure that we're keeping up to date, the audience keeps up to date with Patrick Colbeck?
Well, I'm struggling to get posts out on a daily basis, but there's still a lot of information out there already related to the election, and that's at letsfixstuff.org. You can follow me on Parler at PJ Colbeck or on Twitter on PJ Colbeck, and you can go up to the Facebook page as well. That's kind of primary mechanisms.
Yeah, we want to have you back very soon. Thank you once again, Patrick Colbeck, for joining us here on War Room Pandemic. Still a lot to cover here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Patrick. A lot to cover here, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to just so let's do a hard reset, because there's a lot going on here at the moment. You had these CNN videos that were released last night. I think incredibly important as people turn away and continue to walk away from networks like CNN. And continue to turn on. And I got to tell you, you look at America's Voice guys and the management team every day, and the ramping up of numbers and viewership and minutes watched every single day, whether it's Pluto and Roku and all that. I think Patrick's right. People, you got to go out there and tell your friends and family members, hey, cut the cord. Enough paying carriage. Even if you don't watch CNN, you realize that they charge you a carriage fee inside your subscription, whether you're on whatever cable network you're on. A portion goes to CNN, regardless as to whether or not you turn that channel on. That's where the whole cord cutting thing comes into. People are buying their Rokus and Amazon Fire devices and Apple TVs. That's such an incredible way of using your wallet to vote in this upcoming information war or the information war that we're already in. And Jack, I want to make sure that we're getting the latest on the pandemic here as well. You discussed just before we came on air that you had some updates for us on that.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's interesting. We're talking about rolling out this Pfizer vaccine. Great Britain just yesterday announced that they would accept it and begin distribution. There's some questions about how quickly they did that. The United States had a panel meet yesterday to determine who this was going to be given to first. They had to have a whole panel to tell you what I told you a month ago, which is they're going to give it to first responders and people in old age homes. Interestingly, there was a doctor from University of Vanderbilt named Talbot who said that she was not comfortable with the speed at which they were advancing this authorization because it had not been fully tested on the group that they were proposing to give it to first. So there are lots of question marks. One thing that was interesting, it sounds like Great Britain is not going to impose anything like a vaccine passport, which I think should give some comfort to people. Also, there are many other vaccines in the pipeline. These Pfizer and the Moderna ones are not the only ones available. They seem to be the ones that have most people a little bit on the edge of their seats just because of the new approach. But there'll be more as time goes on. I will say that it does seem that the virus seems to be reducing its lethality over time, which is a very positive thing. We see massive increase in infections, but a decrease in deaths. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
All right, we're back. War and Pandemic. I thought we were having the cold open here from Jeff Zucker, the Project Veritas clip. Producer Vish, who's been more concerned with getting in the seat here to get on air than he has been. Okay, look, guys, maybe clip 2. Can we play clip 2? I want to make sure the audience is fully aware of what these CNN types are saying behind the scenes. So this is from the editorial calls inside CNN. They happen every morning. Jeff Zucker, the president of the company, usually leads those calls. And James O'Keefe from Project Veritas got access. Now, the CNN legal team is pretending that this is some kind of felony, even though they're the guys who produced leaked audio of Melania Trump. That you just nixed your own defense, guys. Let's roll this clip.
CNN says on Jeff Zucker's 9 a.m. editorial conference call how they, the Democratic Party, powerful interest groups, may determine how CNN will cover Trump not conceding the presidential election.
I just want to underscore something that Michael said earlier about the transition and Trump, because I've been talking to a lot of people this morning on both sides, and I just keep hearing the same thing, both from Republicans who have not come out to congratulate Biden, but also to those who have in the Democrats, and that is that we have to be, news organizations have to be very careful and very responsible about not giving Trump too much of a platform on his not conceding, because they feel the transition can go forward. And, other than the national security briefings, which are critical to start now, they just don't want us to exaggerate that Trump isn't leaving office. And I'm going to have a lot of specific reporting on that later today, but just to underscore what Michael has said.
Yep, agreed.
On the issue of why it's important to get the transition going right, the 9/11 report talks about one of the problems was that the trouble that was brewing got lost during the transition. So if you want a good concrete example of what happens when you don't have a good transition, go look at the Twin Towers.
Yeah. So I think that's an important point. I think it was discussed a little bit yesterday in terms of national security. I think it's really important to raise again. I would encourage folks to think about, that 9/11 Commission report and the lack of transition.
Raising the specter of 9/11 as a means by which to force President Trump into a highly preemptive concession, I think, is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And these are the people who proclaim themselves as your betters. They're the people who proclaim themselves the arbiters of what you receive in terms of information. And if you go out of step with them, like Project Veritas and James O'Keefe did, CNN's PR team will tweet at you threatening to sue you. Jack Maxey.
Well, I think there's a buried lead there. I think Jeff Zucker just blamed the Clinton administration for 9/11, did he not? He said the failure to have a clean transition was why we had 9/11. So officially, according to Zucker, The Clinton administration's responsible for 9/11. Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't even make sense, though. It doesn't make any sense. Like, firstly, transitions as we know them nowadays have only been taking place really since 2010, right? The transitions in general, since kind of the 60s, but not in the same way that we know it now, where they get this ton of office space and all of this kind of stuff. And then the second thing about this is, I mean, raising the specter of 9/11 here. I mean, she said, that woman, Stephanie Becker, you can tell why she's not an on-air talent, by the way. A producer couldn't even spit a word out on the 9 a.m. calls. Stephanie Becker says, if you want a reason to look at why a transition must occur immediately, look at the Twin Towers. That is horrible. That is horrific.
Especially because Christiana Amanpour would have to get another portrait for her dining room.
God.
I mean, This is a joke. Let's get real. The CNN is the opposition network. These people may as well be Pravda for the Democratic Party. Zucker may as well be the editor of Der Stürmer at this point. This is such a joke.
No, but hold on. That's the New York Times. Remember, the New York Times actually published Mein Kampf unedited and not critiqued. Seriously, look it up. People don't realize that. All right.
Actually, that's probably one of the better things they did. Anybody who read Mein Kampf, we could have stopped this whole thing.
Yeah. All right, I want to pivot to Vish and the New York Young Republicans. Vish, you guys, when you're not here, you're partying up a storm, but for good reasons and good purposes, bringing the movement together, bringing great speakers to your events. Tell us more.
Yeah, so it's our 108th annual gala. We've been doing this for over 100 years.
Wow, you don't look a day over.
I'm proud to stand in the shoes of great people who have gave us a great legacy to carry on. We intend to carry it on. We've done it through 2 world wars, the Spanish flu. So we're making this happen no matter what Governor Cuomo's office says and no matter what the Daily Beast says. I think our gala is the top article right now about what's going on there. We originally had Sarah Penn, the keynote speaker. She unfortunately had to cancel last minute, but it's okay because we have the firebrand Matt Gaetz, good buddy of mine, coming to be the guest speaker, as well as our great activist James O'Keefe, who delivered that CNN clip. He will also be a speaker there as well.
Yep.
Last year we had Steve, and actually he had a great pivotal moment in that keynote speech that he gave. So if AVN could tee up clip 6,
we'll go out with it.
Let's go.
See you later.
We have always made the right decision. You know why? It was people like the founded this club that put their shoulders to the wheel. That responsibility is your responsibility. You are the beneficiary of this. It's on your shoulders. And if we pull together, we'll win. I want to close with a remark that Napoleon used to tell his marshals, the marshals of France. When you set up to take Vienna, take Vienna.